Welcome. Today, I want us to talk about grief. Actually, I think most of us know what grief is. Grief is that low feeling after a loss of something, after a loss of someone you love, a job, good health, a diagnosis of something like a diagnosis of a bad condition or a disease that you did not expect. And this brings about grief. And I'll say that all of us grieve differently. And don't try to grieve like how so and so grieved, because we respond to grief differently. But the most important thing here is we need to grieve. Grief is important to all of us, because grief is the only way that will help us heal and come back to our normal life. Grief is like day and night. During grieving, we are in night time. We have to make sure that we walk through this journey of darkness for us to reach light. True grieving is the only way we can get healing. There is no way we'll get healing and be back to ourselves or back to our life without us going through grief process. I know there are so many misconceptions about grief depending with the religion we are in, cultures, families, that tells us like, you are not supposed to grieve. Grieving is not good. You have to be strong. You have to do this and this. No. I'm telling you today that grief is very important. And it is always good for us to go through grief whichever way. Some of us will grieve when they lose their job, their business, or when they lose their loved ones, classmates, workmates, family members, or even anything. And true grief, when we grieve, it's the only way that we show that the thing that we have lost was very important to us. Remember, during this time of grieving or during a loss of something, many people will come and tell you, we are sorry you have lost your job, we are sorry you have lost your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister. They'll come even in thousands. We'll have so many people who have come to assist you to bury or to make sure that you have gone through these difficulties. But remember, not all of them will grieve, because the relationship between that thing and them, or that person with them, is not the same relationship you had. Our religion, our culture, or our families, I know we all have grief. And what I can say is grieving is biblical and it is documented. If we go to the book of John, chapter 11, verse 35, when Jesus went to raise Lazarus, we are told that Jesus wept. That is grief. He accepted to be inhuman, forgot that he did not forget, but being inhuman, he knew that grieving was important. Same thing, Paul in the 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 verse 13, he's saying that let us not grieve like people who doesn't know about grieving and don't have hope, meaning that he's appreciating grief. I don't know which version you read, but in my version, that's how I can put it in simple word. St. Paul is telling the people that grieving is important, but how you grieve is what matters. Let us grieve with hope. Therefore, we should not suppress grieving in the name of religion, saying that in our church we don't cry. People who are saved, they are not supposed to cry. Crying is different. I've said we grieve differently. I don't say you have to cry, but grieve in whichever style you think is the best for you to grieve, but you have to go through grieving for you to heal. Some people respond to loss by becoming numb, killing their feeling, not feeling anything. That's not a good way to go, because whether we like it or not, at a point grief will catch up with us, and it will be even more worse when it's too late. People have forgotten about what you lost, and now you are coming up like you are now crying, or you have lost your mind, you are confused like, you remember 10 years ago, 5 years ago, or several months ago, I lost my mom, and now I feel like, you see, you will not get good support. Grieving doesn't have timing. You can grieve at your own timing. It doesn't mean how long it will take for you to start grieving or end your grieving. But the most important thing, you have to grieve for you to heal. Don't become numb. When you become numb and you don't have feeling about it, like nothing has happened, people are crying, people are doing this and this, is like, what are they doing? What are they doing? Like, you are numb. It's not good for you to become numb, because grieving it involves feeling. And when you have feeling is now when you will feel love. When you have feeling is now when you will feel support. You will feel like these people are supporting me, these people actually loves me, these people are encouraging me, and these people have accepted my loss, have accepted my courage, have accepted this and this. But if we become numb, it's not going to be healthy to us. Remember, grief affects every part of our body: brain, heart, physiological thing, everything. Even our thinking will change. So when you decide to become numb and think that you will not grieve, it's going to affect you. That's why it is important for you to grieve. And during this grieving process, it is important for you to know that when you are crying, you are losing a lot of fluid. You need to hydrate. You need to eat well. You need to exercise, and you need to get a lot of rest at this time. You need people to be there for you. You need people to be there for you, to support you. At the moment, you might not have people next to you. Try to get help from even the church. You can get help from friends. You can try to get help to get this support. It is very important. Remember, every time Jesus, I'll talk about Jesus because it is biblical and is documented. We are told that when Jesus was yet to undergo crucifixion, Jesus asked his disciple to accompany him for prayer. And actually, Jesus himself says, my soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to death. That is written and documented. Actually, it is written and documented. At the same time, Jesus says, God, if it is your will, let your will be done. And if it is not, take this cup away from me. Jesus grieved. If you go to the process of grieving process, Jesus went through bargaining, denial, and later you can say the truth. Every process he went through, he went and finished with acceptance. Let your will be done. He accepted as a human being to grieve. Therefore, we who are human, for him he was a son incarnate of God, but he had to go through grief process before his death. Then we respond differently. There are people who will grieve before actual act, and there are those who will grieve after, and those who will grieve during. It is very, very important. And let us support people who are going through grief. Let us understand them. Let us not teach them how they are supposed to grieve. Let us allow them to flow with how their body is grieving. The only thing we need is to keep them support, give them support to grieve and go through the process of grief. Don't criticize them like, oh, for me, I just grieved for one day and it was okay. The relationship between this person and the thing they have lost is actually different. Don't teach them. Don't tell them our culture, our religion, our thing. Let them grieve. Don't tell children that men don't cry. Or don't tell men that men don't cry. Don't tell people that women have to be strong for their family. No, let them grieve. Even a woman can grieve for losing pregnancy for years without you as a man or a neighbor knowing that this woman is grieving. So we grieve for things that we value. We grieve for things that we love. We grieve for the things that we wish it wasn't taken away from us. Today, I want you to subscribe to this channel so that you can get notification on content that I'll be making on chronic conditions and palliative and cancer patients and so on, so that we can be able to be knowledgeable, because knowledge is power.